All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer, where we are hitting a massive, honestly pivotal turning point in our exploration of the source text. Up until now, we've been wandering through a very vivid, highly constructed world. But today, the ground shifts completely. We're looking at the exact moment where the text stops holding our hand through parables and steps out into the stark, bright light of direct theological reality. If you've been following along with the 10th word, you know we've been totally immersed in a deep allegory. But what happens when the allegory ends? Well, that's exactly what we're mapping out today. The transition from fiction to reality, and the leap into what the text calls the 12 truths.
So picture this. Have you ever experienced sitting in a theater completely wrapped up in a fictional drama? You know, the actors are playing their parts, the music is swelling, and you are just totally invested in the story. And then, suddenly, bam, the cinematic gloss vanishes. The film cuts to raw, grainy documentary footage of the actual historical figures the movie was based on. It's a total jolt to the system, right? The fictional scenes end, and the stark reality begins. It completely changes your posture in your seat. You lean in a little closer because, well, the rules of engagement have just changed. This beautifully captures the exact transition we are looking at in our source material today. We have reached that exact threshold.
Section 1, the end of the story and metaphor.
The author is explicitly drawing the curtain on the allegorical universe we've been inhabiting. All those vivid scenes we've spent so much time analyzing, they're officially wrapping up. We've been living in a world of metaphors, right? We explored the ownerless land. We followed that deeply confused man trying to make sense of his surroundings. We walked through those 12 distinct, highly symbolic scenes. But here's the thing. These elements were all part of a grand representation. It was a kinetic, moving metaphor designed to explain incredibly complex ideas. But now, we're dealing with reality. The ownerless land, the confused man, they were just stand-ins. The actual subject matter is the resurrection, the reality of the afterlife, and the absolute need for a direct explanation. The story we've been analyzing was entirely a representation of the gathering of humanity and the life to come. The metaphor has done its job perfectly, and now the text just drops the act.
Moving on to our next section, the 12 truths begin. The tone of our source text shifts so dramatically here. The training wheels, they are officially coming off. We are no longer relying on the comforting structure of a fable to guide our understanding. Nope, we're stepping right into the arena of direct, unvarnished evidence. So the crucial point for us is understanding exactly what this new paradigm actually is. The 12 truths, or as it is in the original text, on iki hakikat, are direct theological proofs of the afterlife. But I really want you to notice the second half of that definition, because this is where the genius of the text really shines through. Each of these 12 truths is grounded entirely in a specific name or attribute of God, and they are presented completely without metaphor. Instead of saying something like, imagine a king who builds a glorious palace, which is a metaphor for a truth, the text is now going to say, look directly at the divine attribute of absolute justice or absolute mercy. Can absolute justice exist without a final reckoning? Do you see the difference there? It's a totally different intellectual exercise. We're pivoting from 12 symbolic images straight into 12 foundational truths, each anchored directly to a divine name.
Which brings us perfectly to our next section, the purpose of the metaphor. Now you might be wondering, if the direct truths are so powerful, why did the author spend so much time building an elaborate story before we even got here? Well, because a story exists to make a complex truth understandable, but the truth itself is not just a story. This synthesis is absolutely vital for us to grasp. Think about human cognition for a second. We struggle to comprehend the infinite. I mean, concepts like eternal resurrection, divine justice on a cosmic scale, the literal afterlife, these are incredibly heavy, dense realities. The metaphor acted as a necessary bridge for us. It gave our minds a familiar landscape, a country, a king, a confused traveler, so we can map out the logic without getting totally overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the theology. But, and this is what the text is telling us right now, you cannot live on the bridge forever. The bridge gets you to the destination. The story points to the reality, but we must never, ever confuse the story for the reality itself. Now that our minds are primed and we understand the logical flow, it's time to step off that bridge and dive step by step into the actual core reality of the universe. To really underscore the gravity of this intellectual leap, the source material grounds this transition in a profound piece of scripture. Say, are those who know equal to those who do not know? Only they will remember who are people of understanding. By invoking the specific verse from the Quran right at the transition point, the text is issuing a direct invitation. Actually, scratch that, it's more like a challenge to the reader. It's asking us to elevate our intellect,
We're being called to become people of understanding. We're moving way past just enjoying a good, thought-provoking narrative. We're being asked to acquire deep, foundational knowledge. The text essentially demands that we engage our absolute highest critical faculties as we move into these 12 truths.
Before we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. Why do you think sometimes a metaphor can be more powerful than a naked truth? Even as we celebrate transitioning to the direct, naked reality of the 12 truths, we kind of have to acknowledge that the story we just left behind permanently altered how we see these concepts. Do we need the protective layer of a metaphor to let a harsh or massive truth slip past our defenses? Or is the naked truth always the ultimate goal? As we prepare to unpack the 12 truths in our future studies, keep this tension in mind. The story has ended, the reality has begun. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I highly encourage you to keep this transition in the back of your mind as you continue exploring this absolutely fascinating material.